very thankful for a couple of people, in particular to Mary Rose Ditz. Some of you may have known Mary Rose. She wrote this book. It's called A Story of a Family by Mary Rose, and I helped, and that's just a little bit. She did most of the work. And I have found what she has in here is very, very accurate. I mean, using Ancestry.com, it all comes out to be just pretty much the way she says it is. So, and I have visuals. So I'm going to hold these up a little bit, and then I'll rest them on the podium here. But we're going to start off with a gentleman by the name of Andreas Ditz. Okay. Very good. Yeah. All right. I'm coming across here. I think I'm skipping here. Sound good? Okay. All right. Andreas Ditz. He's the man from, I pronounce it Reuter. I'm not sure the correct pronunciation. Okay. Anyway, Andreas lived in Reuter. The story is that he's supposed to have come from Austria, Graz, Austria. Not real sure about that. I can't doubt that. I have no information on that, to be truthful. But he married a lady by the name of Anna Fehrenbach. Now, they lived in Reuter and had these children right here. I'll read them off to you. The only one I'm going to focus on is the second one. It's Johann Baptist Ditz. He had a sister named Mary Teresa. He had another sister named Crescentia Ditz. If you're related to the Leets, you may go back far enough and you'll find Crescentia married a Leet and led down to Felix Leet, who was around here. Andreas, the second, I guess you'd say, he moved out to California, out to Stockton, California. And Barbara was married into the Groner family, married to Joseph Groner. And so, of this bunch, the Ditz effect affects a lot more people than just plain Dietzes. So, we're going to pull out Johann Baptist here. Oh, by the way, when they got married, Andreas was 42, and his lovely wife was 19. So, yeah. Good tasting. The interesting story about how Andreas died, though, is that, as Emily alluded to, the Napoleonic Wars were going on then, and the troops were coming into his neighborhood and directly into his house, and he was stabbed in the throat and died trying to protect his children, wife and children. So, that's what happened to poor Andreas. So Johann Baptist, he is the one we're going to talk about, who came here to the Fryburg area. He was married to Magdalena, I'm going to use the German, Witzigmann, B-I-T. It's really W, but we did a B sound in German. Let's see. Johann came over here with his family, and I found on let's say, immigration papers that say he came over here. He had a little wagon, he had some harnesses, he had 2 beds and bedding to go with those beds, and 1 gun. So I think he must have been a little bit more wealthy than what we imagined to have that kind of, of course he had a chest with clothes, but a little more wealthy than some of the people that had to go to the indenture. Okay, so they left in 1825 in about March or so, and they headed towards Havre, or the Havre, as you talked about, where everybody seemed to leave from, because emigrating. And he was on it. Francis Henrietta was the name of the ship. He only had 6 children at that time. So we'll go on to my next visual. Just one more. I can't tell. I'll just here. This one. Okay. All right. Here we go. Maybe better? It's good. All right, these are the children of Andreas and Magdalena Ditz. They live, if you went out here and kind of follow the little creek that goes up around here and get back on the lower part of Ditz farm, you might find their old foundation. That's where they lived originally. I was back there, I don't know how many years ago it was. It was way, way a long time ago. But the foundation is still there. Is it still there? Can you go back and see it?
About 5 years ago.
Yeah, I'm going to have to do that again because it was a long time ago. All right, so they settled way down here in the valley and not connected with Upper Fryburg at that point in time. Of their family, they had Ferdinand, Andreas, Jacob, Caroline, Matthias, Mary Magdalene, Johann Jr., and Joseph. And we're going to focus mostly on Ferdinand because he's the one that got involved with the Washington House. Okay, so Ferdinand was born in 1810 and he died in 1881. And if I could just read a little something for you. When he died, his obituary says, last Sunday morning, the village of Fryburg lost one of its most influential citizens, Ferdinand Ditz, in his 71st year, passed into the beyond, the land of the living. He had been afflicted by heat a few days before, but had in a measure recovered his usual health. He was advised not to go to church, but he replied that it might be the last time and he would like to go. He was taken to the church in a carriage, and he got out and started to walk up the church from the road. When halfway up, he took a fainting spell and was taken into the church. He had hardly reached the pew when he asked for assistance and was dead before he could be carried out of the church. He with others coming from Old Freiburg, Germany, founded and named the village in which he lived and died. So that would have been the old church, not the big stone church we have now, because that wasn't in use till like 1886 or something like that, I believe. So he died in 1881. All right. He worked at an iron furnace for a while to raise some money. It's kind of interesting. I'm not sure. They said an iron furnace owned by a black, and I think that would have been down towards Shippenville. Excuse me. There were two iron furnaces closer by here in Fryburg, down towards Hemlock. There's one down there called Hemlock Furnace, and there was one beyond that, just a little bit. It was called Clinton Furnace. And I read somewhere about these furnaces that the farmers, while they're clearing their land, would oftentimes raise some money, would sell wood off of their property to these furnaces because they used the wood to make charcoal to smell out the iron. So I'm not sure why he worked clear down there, but he did. He was married in 1834. He wouldn't get married to his wife until he had paid for the property he bought. So that's why he worked in the furnaces. He decided that he couldn't rightfully take a wife without having his property cleared. So he married Francesca Eisman, daughter of the Eismans that settled across the road. So we have the Ditzes on one side and the Eismans on the other side. So he and Francesca lived in a log house that was down pretty close to where Jeff Dietz's house was. And they also helped build the first school. They originally had the school in his home, in John's home, or Ferdinand's home, excuse me. And then in 1855, they built a log house type thing for school. So he was influential doing that. Yeah. There you go. He transported, he was responsible for bringing teachers to the school. He would go to St. Mary's and bring teachers down here to help teach in the schools. He also started to pay for this. Emily talked about Father Anton Tools. He helped to pay for his money it was cost for becoming a priest. He built Washington House in 1849. In 1849, it was a wood frame house, frame building, and it caught fire, burned to the ground in 1879. So he rebuilt it, made it out of brick this time. Now, great cyclone came through. They called it a cyclone, which I assume it was a tornado of some kind. It pretty much flattened Fowler's furniture and store coming through. Went up to the Washington House, took the roof off, took the back wall off, pretty much demolished the barn, and lost the wash house. So they had to rebuild that. They had a peaked roof on it until the cyclone came along, and once it was gone, they decided, well, let's just give it a flat roof. So pretty much like it did today. Until they added the porches. They added big porches onto it to make it complete. So that's our guy Ferdinand. We can put that one down. Ferdinand and Francesca, they had 5 children, 4 girls, and a boy. And we're going to talk about the boy. The boy was Dustin Ditz. Before I do that, I want to pay a little tribute to Maria. She was married twice. She was married to an Allball first. Killian Allball was his name. Killian died, left her with, I think, a couple children. And Maria remarried. Well, she remarried a Beaton. His name was Joseph Beaton. So Joseph and Maria had a child. They named it after Killian. They called him Killian Beaton. Killian had a child. They named it after the grandfather. They called him Joseph. And that was about 1910. Well, Joseph ended up, he got married, and he ended up going to France in World War II. And I think Mary Rosenberg refers to the fact that he was in the Normandy, landed in the Normandy beaches, but he did not land on D-Day. He landed in July. He went into the army, I think it was January or February, did all his basic training and such. And then he was transferred over to France in July 16th. He landed in 1944. Yes, Mary Rose went over there to see the grave. Joseph was in part of the army that did not move forward to Germany through Netherlands. Instead, his unit was headed for the town of Brest. Brest was one of the submarine stations, and they would like to capture the submarine stations. There were 3 ports that have submarine stations in it. And while this part of the army was moving that direction, Joseph was killed. They buried him in the Brittany American Cemetery. Mary Rose and his wife, Frances Spader Beekman. He went over, I think in the 60s, late 50s, early 60s, something like that. And I had the very fortunate chance to get to France. How many years ago, Linda? 2019. We went to France and we went to the cemetery to see where Joseph Peter was laid. And it's the most serene place everyone would find a good place to be buried. That would be it. It's very well kept. We put all the flags on our soldiers up here for Memorial Day. But let's not forget about those guys that are laying over there in Europe on this day too. So our tribute to the Beaker family and Joseph Beaker for what he gave up. All right. Augustine was married twice. His first wife was Agnes, Blessed Virgin Mary Seth. Agnes of the Blessed Virgin Mary Seth. Their marriage didn't last long. She passed away and left with 2 children. One, Tony Ditz, and Maria Ditz. And then Augustine remarried, and he married Mary Songer from down around Shannondale, somewhere down around that neck of the woods. The Songers all lived down in that area, up in Clarion County. So he married Songer, and she was actually working in a hotel, I think at the time. And apparently they got together. But anyway, like this, really? Okay. Augustine's mother, Francesca Eisman, lived with them for about 15 years or so. And then when she died, she passed on the hotel to Augustine. She passed on the hotel to Augustine, who ran it for, well, he died at a young age too, 1897, and I think I've said everything about him. He was very influential in helping with the church also. He contributed money to the church, and he was on the planning commission, or whatever you might call it back then, for building the church. And next. So I talked. You want to retire? I have this broken down so you can see the first two children that they had Agnes Seth. Okay, good. All right, then they had this really large family here. We're going to pick out this fellow right here, Aloysius Augustine Ditz. He was my grandfather. Aloysius Augustine married Emma Mary Schmader, and they lived in the hotel for a while, till about 1924. I shouldn't say that. They, in the hotel till they started having a larger family. Then they lived a little bit above the Fryburg Bank. And then after that, they went down to the farm. And they lived in a building that was an old granary that had been converted into a house. And that's where my mother was born. Loesch loved baseball. He just, in his blood, played baseball. He was a catcher, and he played with the Fryburg team, and you can see his picture over here as one of the players of the Fryburg team. He got into he didn't really particularly care for hotel business, so he always wanted to farm, and he got into the dairy business. And to my understanding, he used to have a milk route through Fryburg delivering milk in the mornings, just like old-fashioned milk. Yeah. And from what Mary Rose alludes to, there was probably a lot of the milk given away to young kids that couldn't afford a glass of milk during sometimes. My mother's mother passed away when Mom was only 9 years old. She had a brain tumor, and she died on Christmas Day, 1934. And kind of left a rather large family. If you want to show the other one. The next one. And some of these people you might know, in particular. Mary Rose was the oldest one. She assumed the duties of mother of the family then. And then there was Frances. Frances, we call her Sis. Openrader Oaks. And then of course we had Gerald, also known as Judd. And we have a couple of his children here today, which I'm pleased to see. And then we got Robert. Everybody knew him as Max Bates. Go Mix. Ruth Ann, she was married twice, married to Michelle first, and then to Earl Jenner first. And then, of course, the next lady, Agnes Reed, was my mother, and she married J. Paul McCloskey from Brown. So maybe now you understand the connection. And then, of course, Joan was born. Joan was a twin. She had a twin brother that's the family. And this is the picture right there. And this is at the bottom. That's not the end. So I've got 6 grandchildren. And they can talk then sometime about their, whether it be 8 generations behind them, ahead of them, that came, you know. So that's pretty much all I got to say. So I think it gives us pretty good timing for our